broadcast, please turn off your cameras, use your chat to ask any questions. That way your image will not be used in our recordings. We'd like to record these so we can post them on our website for those who can't make it at this time. So we really appreciate that and appreciate your understanding. And Solomon, you can go ahead and start recording. As other points of order too, again, like I mentioned, we're here to answer any questions you might have about the program that you weren't able to find on the internet, or if you just want to talk to us. So please ask them. I would rather answer questions for the amount of time that you're here with me than going through this slide deck. So please ask them at any point in time. Feel free to ask while either of us are speaking. Ask in the group chat using the chat feature, or raise your hand if you have a question. My name's David Boone, by the way. I'm the director of the program. Solomon Lifshitz is here, who is our program coordinator. While one of us is speaking, the other one will be monitoring the chat so that we can interject and answer any questions that you have. Okay. So with that being said, I'm going to get started and tell you a little bit about our program and what we expect of it this year. Obviously, all of you have heard of us. You're here now, but we are the Hillman Cancer Center Academy. Our program's been around for more than a decade now. We've recently were named one of the top 100 global education innovations by this group named 100 Ed. But really, everything that we love about this program is seen in these pictures are our students who do amazing work with the really dedicated mentors and faculty, graduate students, postdocs, technicians at the University of Pittsburgh and beyond. So it's really a one large family. Our mission of the Hillman Academy is to really give you two things that we think we can provide that many others wouldn't be able to, at least in our region. And that's to provide you mentorship and authentic research experiences. So we also do other things like offering career preparatory experiences, but we want to do this to a diverse group of motivated high school students who are really interested in pursuing STEM after high school and hopefully beyond. And our goal, one of our goals through this mission is to increase not only the quality and quantity, but diversity of students who are prepared to do this, who to take on this role. So this is an image I always show at these talks. They vary from year to year. This is what we normally would do on the first day. Of course, 2020 was quite different, and we aren't sure what 2021 will look like either. So, in 2020, this is what our image looked like, right? So we were a completely virtual program, only open to the YES component of our program, the Youth Enjoying Science, and I'll talk about that distinction later on. We were smaller, so instead of our normal 65, 70 students, we had 16 high school students and 4 undergraduates. So we were considerably smaller and were specifically funded by and specifically reached out to youth who met the qualifications of our funding sources. So we were much smaller. We weren't in person. We've never met in physical space. And while we haven't committed to any modality going forward in 2021, we really don't know what we'll do. We could be in person. I find that is going to be unlikely that we would be completely back in normal and in person. It's a possibility that we might have some hybrid program where some students might be able to come in lab if they're local, and we'd still do more of the didactic sessions virtually, or we might be just like last year, a completely virtual program where everyone's working remotely. All of that, it will be dictated by the course of the pandemic, will be dictated by state and regional legislation and university policy of whether or not we're allowed to have anyone on campus. So we are at this time not committing to any modality, but we are committing that we will exist. If we are completely virtual, it's likely our program will be smaller like last year, but we're hoping that we will still have at least 35, 40 students. But it might look different. If we're all virtual, students may be paired together instead of individually matched with mentors. And I'll try to, throughout this talk, try to elaborate on what the differences might be of in-person versus virtual going forward. But please ask any questions that you might have as I'm going forward. The other difference that happened last year with being completely virtual is that all of the internships were computational in nature. I'm not sure if that's what will happen again this year, but if they're not computational, they'll still be based around data analysis, or if they're not, they would be based in literature searches, or perhaps viewing research being done through a GoPro, or Zooming with individuals who are doing the work, and then maybe having you interact with it in some way. So, we're still trying to plan for all possible modalities going forward. And we're hoping to have that decision sometime in the spring before we make final decisions on students. So that way we'll know if you are still interested in this. And if you started the application, you'll see that we ask this very explicitly. Are you interested only if it's virtual, only if it's in person or hybrid? You'll be able to tell us that. Likewise, you'll be able to tell us if you're interested in a computational project, or if you're only interested if you're able to be in the lab. So those are going to be all important things for us this year that's quite different from a quote unquote normal year. Regardless of the modality that we go forward, the whole goal of the program, I told you, is to provide you with authentic research experience and mentorship. And that's where you will still spend the majority of your time. A lot of this is self-driven. So typically individual students are placed into individual research labs. Sometimes there might be 2 students per research lab, but in a typical year, it's usually one-on-one in a group. But it's not typically 1 student per 1 mentor, it's 1 student per 1 research group, where you have a faculty member who oftentimes comes up with the project, but the day-to-day interactions are commonly with trainees in the lab, graduate students, those doing postdoctoral fellowships, medical students, sometimes undergraduates, or research technicians or research staff that might be in the labs who are working with you in the day-to-day aspects of learning how to do the hands-on aspects of the research. But we promise, regardless if we're virtual or not, you will get a peek, I think, behind the curtain of what real research looks like in a major research university. That's where you'll spend the majority of your time. Again, if you're in the lab, you'll be with your mentors, or at least your near peer mentors doing the research most of the time that you're with our program. So our program will be 7 to 8 weeks, and it's approximately, students spend 35, 38 hours a week, 37 and a half hours a week is our max on their research project. If we're virtual, you're not going to be with your mentor all the time, obviously, but you'll have check-ins. You'll have a meeting, maybe daily, maybe weekly, where you'll check with them. You get your marching orders, you go off and do the research. It'll still be real research, you'll still be learning how to do it, but it will be very different experience. We want to be very upfront with that. We did it this year. We think that it was fairly successful given the circumstances, and we will continue along with the lines that we did this year. We're making some adjustments where we think we can do better as well. And that includes hopefully recruiting some more mentors if they're able to do it this year. So most of your time will be spent doing research, right? That's the goal. This is not intended to be like coursework. That's not at all what we're about. We're more about you taking a deep dive into a very specific research focus. And there's a lot of different research topics that you can broadly choose from, and you'll note this on my application as well. You'll choose, or you'll rank the research sites. And there are some descriptions of the different research sites, but we also realize that this is probably the hardest part of the application, is trying to decide at your age, 15, 16, 17, 18 years old, of exactly what type of research you might be interested in, or even understanding what the different terms mean, or the differences between these groups. And we understand that. And so my main advice whenever I'm talking to students and trying to decide of where to study is to break it down into 2. So would you like to be in a lab working hands-on with pipettes? Or are you on the other side very interested in computer science and this intersection of computer science and biology? So if it's the former and you're really interested in working in a lab and pipetting, if we're able to, right? So you'll only be able to do this if we're in person, then you would choose the sites Cancer Biology, Tech Drive X, Immunotherapy and Cancer Immunology, or the Women's Cancer Research Center, right? So that's the primary focus of all of those. There's a high degree of overlap at the type of work that's done at those different sites. If you're very interested in cancer biology, ICI or WCRC, you will have definitely a cancer biology project. If you are interested in kind of broader aspects, so bioengineering, genetics, microbiology, that's where Tech Drive X comes into play. There's a wide variety of research that's being done there that's not all necessarily cancer related. Okay, so otherwise, it's again very difficult, I know, to know the differences. I'm happy at the end of this conversation. I'm not going to spend much time on it now so we can get through these slides and answer your questions. But if you have more questions, I'm happy to talk about each of the sites, both either now or you know, through email or setting up another call with any of you individually to help you decide. Okay, so if you're interested in wet lab, pipetting, working with cells, those types of things, cancer biology, Tech Drive, ICI or WCRC are for you. If you are more interested in computation, then the two sites that are predominantly computational, almost 100% computational, are the computer science, biology, and biomedical informatics, and the comp bio. And if you're interested in computation, I think you'll be very happy in either one of those sites. Okay, and you're not necessarily working on a cancer biology project in either of those sites, but you might be. You will definitely be working at something at the intersection of biology or medicine and health. Okay, so those are those two sites. The other important thing to note is if you are 15, these are the only two sites that you are eligible to apply for. So to have a student on campus, it's Pitt legislation that you have to be at least 16 to be in labs, but you can be 15 to working on computational projects. Okay, so that's very important in your application. If you're not going to be 16 by the start date of the program, you have to choose these two sites, or wait till next year whenever you can go to a site that maybe you're more excited about. Now, in addition to the research, I tell you, this is the vast majority of where you'll spend your time is doing research. We do offer some academic professional development as well. There will be lectures and presentations. If we are in person, each of those 6 research sites have their own lectures. Okay, so we are one large program, but each of the 6 research sites is almost like its own smaller program. So we'll have lectures that are very focused on whatever the type of research is being done at that site. So if it's cancer biology, there'll be lectures on cancer biology. If it's immunology and cancer therapy, it's going to be on immunology or cancer biology. If it's in the Cosby site, it will be machine learning and advanced statistics and those types of things, right? So the lectures are going to be very focused. Also, each site has a different number of lectures. Some of them have them once a week, twice a week. Some of them have, at the Cosby site that I direct, we have generally 4 lectures total. So we will have different lectures and presentations. Each site will have often different career and academic speakers who come and tell you about their career, whether it be in academia, as faculty members, as clinicians. We have MDs that come, sometimes from biotech. It all really depends on the site that you're at. And then we do this as a group as well. So if we are in person, we'll meet once a week for 2 hours where we have what we call our keynote sessions. And this is a time for us all to come together, to get to know each other a bit, and to really work on these professional skills that might benefit everyone. Something else that happens at every site and will happen together are research discussions. So you'll spend a lot of time talking to each other about the work that you're doing. So, and that's the goal, right? Our goal is not to teach from a textbook and allow it to learn a whole lot about, or a little bit about a whole lot. Our goal is for you to take a really deep dive into one research topic where at the beginning you have absolutely no idea about it, you struggle to read it, you don't understand the terminology, but by the end, you know more than almost anyone about that research. And so what we try to do is to then have you teach each other about the type of research you're doing so that they can learn from someone who's speaking the same language. So you'll have a chance to do a lot of research discussions, having network, doing fun. Now, if we are in a virtual world, we'll actually have more lectures, right? So we found that in a virtual world where we're not all together all day long, it's nice to have FaceTime, it's nice to connect. So we'll have lectures 3-4 days a week. Well, a combination of lectures, career speakers. We'll check in almost every day and have an hour of conversation that way. That's a part of the feedback that we received from the students this year, is that they liked being around each other and around us and that kind of check-in to make sure that you're constantly moving forward too. Because again, if you're working a lot asynchronously with your research, it's very easy to not do it, right? So, we'll have more continuous check-ins as an entire group. But we will still have a lot of these exact same components. And one of them is final presentation. So regardless of modality, all of you by the end of the summer will write a brief abstract. So it's essentially one paragraph. You will make a poster and you'll make a talk. Okay. And we're going to help you do this. So this is not one of those situations where you're left on your own. You're going to do a lot of the work yourself, but we're going to show you how to give a talk. We're going to show you how to make a poster, and then you'll be working with your mentors one-on-one to do this, and then you'll have access to others at your research site or with me or others to help build those. Now, if we're in a virtual world, last year, we just gave a talk. We didn't build a poster. We didn't do a poster session. So generally, our last day is a huge celebration. We take over the entire bottom floor of the Hillman Cancer Center. We invite all of your families, friends, teachers, whoever you want to bring, and you give a talk, and we have a poster session. If we're completely virtual, we don't have definitive plans yet, but you'll definitely still be giving at least a 10-minute talk, an 8 to 10-minute talk on the work that you do. But again, this is a celebration of the work and a chance for you to really show off all of the cool things that you did for the summer. I have a picture here too. Also, this reminds me, because I don't often talk about this, we do have a very small undergraduate program. You will interact with these students as in both a virtual setting or in person. But this is another opportunity for certain students that the only people eligible to come to our undergraduate program are students who participated as high school students. So this is, we hope when you come to our program, you're part of our family for a very long time, that we can help you and you stay connected with us. And part of that is providing other opportunities to come back and work with us again. Okay. Our students have done really great things, and I show this not as a demonstration of this is an expectation. What I show this as is I think, really reflective of the great work that our pairs of students and mentors do together, right? This really demonstrates, I think, that you're doing real work. Part of that means if you're doing real work, doing real research, what you'll find is like 95% of the time it fails, right? So over a 7-week period of time, 8-week period of time, that's not very much time to get a really huge project done, right? It's something that's very, very small. It often takes people years and years to accumulate enough data to tell a cohesive story to be for publication. But we've had students who have done very well in high school related programs, right? So for science fairs, for scholarship opportunities, we've had students who have accomplished and have been able to win these things, the students in the mentor pairs, and we're here to support you through that. But again, that is not the expectation. Our expectations is you try real research, and what that means is you might have absolutely nothing at the end except for that deep knowledge of what didn't work, and that's completely fine. That's our expectation, is just you engage in science. And that's the reason why we encourage you to go to these science fairs. It's just another opportunity for you to engage more deeply with others in the scientific process, so you can really understand and start to live the life of a scientist. We will, again, if we are able to do anything in person, we would typically go to Pirates games, go to Kennywood, amusement parks, go to the museums and do things together on weekends. Again, this year might look very different, I think, just like it did last year, where we won't do these things, but instead we may be playing Jackbox games together or other types of online experiences of streaming movies together and kind of getting to know each other socially through that, so you can enjoy each other. Because again, one of the great things I think about what I've seen in the past with students is their bond with one another, and talking to them, some of them create really great friends that they talk to years and years from now, and we hope that will still be true this year. And you'll have connection to those students. That's the other thing. This is, and I need to update this. This is actually a year or so old. This is a Wordle where the size of the font is proportional to the number of students at each of these institutions. So our students have gone all over the place. Again, we're over a decade, have over 500 alumni. They're enrolled in a lot of the local schools. So for those of you who are in Pittsburgh, not surprising that Pitt is one of the highest number of enrollments, but also some very prestigious places that potentially you're interested in, Harvard, Stanford, Penn. And what we like to do, if you are accepted into these, you have questions, if we still have a strong connection with those who are at those institutions or were before, we'll try to connect you if you have questions. So another way for you to engage with the Hillman Academy family that we hope you become part of. Okay, so that's what the program is. Who should apply? We get this question all the time. We don't have basic minimums of GPA or board scores or any of those types of things. What we're really looking for are highly motivated students who think they're interested in science or research or medicine, right? That's who we really want. So if you can demonstrate that to us during your application, that's really what we're looking for. Our only requirements, you have to be at least 16. I know I've already talked about this, to be pipetting in traditional wet labs, or at least 15 for the computational labs, where you'll go to Cosby or CompBio. Okay. Cost, program is completely free, regardless if it's in person, it's virtual, or no matter the modality, the program's free. We do not provide, if we are in person, we don't provide transportation to campus. There are caveats to that I'll mention, and that's specifically, basically, if you're part of the YES program, part of the Doris Duke program, which I'll talk about, we will provide bus passes. So we will, if you have a need to get to campus, you don't have a way of doing it, we will work with you to try to find a way, if public transportation is possible for you, to get you to campus. Right? We want to remove all barriers so all students can participate. We do, again, we have not yet received word if dormitories will be open to individuals outside of the University of Pittsburgh's students yet. That's still very much undecided. Last year, we were not allowed, not surprisingly. I do not know if we will have residential housing this year or not. If we're allowed to and we're in person, then we will, if we think it's safe. And that residential housing, it's available for a fee, unless you are stipend eligible, which I'll talk about how you become stipend eligible, and then we will pay for that housing for you as well. So the program for us is always free. We want it to be open to everyone. This is an expense that we only have so much money to pay for dorms, which are very, very expensive, as you might imagine, over a 7 or 8 week period. And so we can only pay certain students housing fees, okay? To be eligible for a stipend, these are the qualifications to do so. So we have very much a dedication to diversity and inclusion. It's one of the reasons why we exist. We guarantee that a minimum of 50% of our students each year will be from underrepresented groups, as defined by the National Institute of Health, who help to support us. So our financial contributions that run this program come from primarily the National Institutes of Health and the Doris Duke Charitable Foundation, and some local foundations like the Hillman Foundation as well. And that is specifically to support students from underrepresented groups, although our program is open to all students. So to qualify, you can qualify across racial or ethnic backgrounds: Black, African American, Hispanic, Latinx, Native American, Pacific Islanders, students with disabilities, students who are from households whose income falls below federal guidelines that qualify you for free and reduced lunch. If you're coming from an environment, a school that puts you at a disadvantage, so it doesn't offer AP classes or IB classes, it doesn't have advanced science classes, that can qualify you as well. If you're a first-time college student, and there are actually a few more that, while you're going through the application, we'll have links that you can click on and see if you qualify based on the National Institute of Health definition. Now, to encourage students from underrepresented groups to apply and to attend, we will pay you $2,400. We'll provide free meals if we're on campus. The $2,400 is regardless if we're in person or remote. The free meals are obviously only on campus, free housing only if we're on campus, free bus passes, loaner laptops if you need them, network cards, those types of things. But of course, just like everyone, you'll have a lifetime access to us, and we try and hopefully can help you down this pathway to your science career. The other opportunity, if you are if you do qualify for a stipend, is that we have a new program, a relatively new program called the Youth Enjoy Science. In the YES program, we provide guarantee, or we will guarantee admission for 2 straight summers, right? So during the application, if you qualify for a stipend, you will be asked a question if you're interested in the YES program. So if you're interested in working with us and taking a deeper dive, then check yes. And what that gives you access to is 2 consecutive summers of research, as well as some work during the school year. Now, the work during the school year is all virtual and almost all asynchronous. We usually meet for maybe 1 hour a month. It's not. And the whole goal of it is to help you convert the work that you did in the summer into those science fair opportunities, into scholarship opportunities, those types of things. Okay. And if you do that and you complete the full 2-year program, we'll actually pay you $7,200 for that. And this is just an outline of what that looks like. I won't go into great detail, but both of them center really on your research experience in the summer. That's like the big focus of both of them. And then, really just helping you to, you can see here, enter into science fairs if you're local, PJS, PERSEF, if you know those, PRESEF, I'm never sure of the correct way of saying it, will help you to enter into these types of fairs. If you're not local, you can enter into any fairs that you want, and we're here to help you. We'll team you with people that can help edit your papers, edit your presentations, and really take the work that you did, the scientific work you and your mentor did together, to a whole other level. We hope. Again, this will require permission from your mentor, something to always remember. All of the research that we do, even me as a faculty, is actually owned by the university. So federal grants that come in go through the university and come to me. Even if I write the grant, it's not my grant, it's the university's. And so all of the work is owned by the university. So anything that you do will also be owned by the university because it's through a federal grant. So that's something to remember. You always would need permission in order to enter into these science fairs, but that is something that is almost always given. Okay, so something to remember though going forward. All right, so that's it. So a brief summary before I pass it over to Solomon on the logistics of how to apply in case you have any of those questions. What do you get from us? We think you get a chance to do real science. Whether we're in person or virtual, you're going to get a chance to do real science. You'll get mentorship. So hopefully you get to start that scientific network that will last you forever. You'll get letters of recommendation if you want them for scholarships for colleges and those things. Again, some of that is dependent on you building those relationships with those mentors, right? So it's an active two-way street of coming in, getting to know them getting to know you, so they can build trust. You can build trust with them, and they have something to write about. It's much easier to write about someone if they know them better. So some of these things are also, it really is dependent on you and taking advantage of your opportunity with us. Have academic professional development. You're going to learn a lot. I know you will. Again, we know that you'll have a good time, or we hope you will, especially if we're in person. If we're virtual, we're still working on how to have a really good time and get to know each other, make better friends virtually. So that's all that I have right now. I'm very happy to answer any questions. We will also take questions at the end after Solomon speaks. But I'm going to now, if there are any questions, I'll take a minute to answer, and then I'm going to turn it over to Solomon so he can talk about the application process. And again, our applications are open until March 1st right now. So are there any questions about the program before I turn it over? If not, Solomon, why don't you take over? And if there are questions, please feel free to ask them while Solomon is speaking. I will type out answers, or if I think it requires more in-depth verbal response, I will wait until the end and I will read every question and answer every question. Okay?
We do have I was just say 2 quick questions that I received. So one is the program open to international students?
Okay.
And I can answer that briefly. So sometimes yes is basically the answer. In order to be allowed in the labs and sort of to get the access that you need, the university and hospital require that you are either a U.S. citizen or that you, if you're from another country, you have a permanent residence card. So you'll need to have a certain documentation. If you have questions specifically about your specific case, you can email me or check what the criteria is. All right, and then the other one that I got, Right. How many students are we looking to admit? Do you want to answer that, David?
Yeah,
or-
that's a good question, and I apologize if I forgot to answer that. How many students we admit every year is directly dependent on the number of mentors we're able to recruit, right? So in pre-COVID in 2019, we were getting larger and larger. I think we had close to 70 students. We've been hovering in that 55 to 70 for the last several years. Because of COVID, there are many reasons why we'd be smaller, right? So one, again, if we're not allowed to be in labs, I think we're going to be smaller because it's much easier for a mentor to also work with you if you're in the lab and they're teaching you hands-on. We have computational research is very conducive to being done remotely. But some of the in-lab stuff, it's much harder and will require much more time. And so we'll have fewer mentors, I think. The other thing is that when everything shut down, labs shut down too, right? And this is very, very hard on the labs. Most people are on timelines, grants are only support people for so long. And so it hurts the productivity of labs. And so there might still be labs that are recovering from this, right? There's still policies in place where some labs are doing shifts because to basically fit the guidelines of social distancing in labs. And so again, those labs are less likely to take students. If they're already doing shifts with their full employees and their trainees, they're not going to take anyone else. So I don't have a great understanding of what the number will have. What I'm really hoping is that even if we're virtual, we'll be able to have a minimum of 34 high school students so we can fill all of those stipend slots, right? So those stipend slots will be the first things filled, and then everything after that will be fair game to everyone. So we're hoping that we'll have a minimum of 34 high school students. But at this moment, it's really, really difficult for me to say. It's just so dependent on the state of the pandemic and the state of the world that we're in, and everything is just moving too quickly to really know. Okay, I hope that answers your question. I have a couple here, Solomon, that I'll try to address, and if there are more, you can do it. Okay, one more. One person wanted to confirm 15-year-olds can only do computational research. Yes, that is true. 15-year-olds cannot be in labs. You have to be 16, and you have to be 16 by day one of the program if we're in person. So that's true. Let's see.
We have our admissions rolling this year.
Oh, admissions rolling? No, we do not have rolling admissions. That's actually a good question that comes up a lot too, of how our admissions work. The way that admissions work, if we are going to be in person, whoever you rank first and second, whatever site you rank, CB, Cosby, there's an admissions group for that site. So whoever you rank first and second will read your application and have first dibs at you. But also, then we come together as one giant group and have a conversation about kind of all students who we think might be good fits, even if it's not for a single one. So your application will be read by at least 2 people. If we're all virtual and we're only computational, then the computational sites will read all of the students who say that they're interested in it and go from there. And what was the exact question, Solomon, before I went down
our
that line?
admissions rolling.
So admissions are not rolling. Yeah. We wait until after the deadline, until we have all of the applications, so that we can compare everyone together. Okay, there's another question. How will labs/research be enabled if the program goes completely virtual? So again, hopefully I addressed this a little bit. The way that it will work is most projects will probably be computational in some way. So it'll be data analysis in some way, or computer programming. It will be heavily influenced by that Cosby and CompBio site, but we are hoping and think that we'll be able to recruit some mentors from the other sites as well that might be a little more creative. So maybe it's someone in the lab is actually doing the wet lab work, but they're including you in it. They're talking to you about it, maybe giving you some of the data to analyze from the assays they're running. Something else that might happen is They may give you more of a literature review where there's a question and they want you to go read a bunch of papers and come back together and tell them about it and learn from it. So if it's not computational, it will, again, each lab will have have their own ways, I think, of being creative, of working with you. But if I was a student, I would assume that if we're virtual, your project will be much more computational, or at least analyzing data from a lab. Okay, I see another question. Is this for people who live in the United States on visas or only citizens? So as Solomon said, you have to be either a US citizen or a permanent resident, I think is the requirement of the university. It's definitely the requirement of the grants. Let's see. I'm interested in the YES program. I was wondering if the stipend only apply if the indicator I fit is if my high school does not have AP classes. That's a good question. So you only have to fulfill, to be eligible for a stipend, only one of those things has to be true. Okay, so if you're from a high school, and if you'll have to demonstrate, so that's the one that's the fuzziest, right? You'll have to demonstrate that you are at a disadvantage because of the schooling that you're getting. But if you can demonstrate that, then you would absolutely be eligible for a stipend still. And let's see, I think that is all the questions I have. Do you have any more, Solomon?
Yeah. So do transcripts need to be official? My school doesn't allow official transcript. So no, we'll take an unofficial transcript. It doesn't have to be, basically as long as it's within a year or so is fine. But even if whatever transcript you send us, we'll accept. So then I have two other questions about what is the acceptance rate and how many applications does the Hillman Academy receive? So those actually are going to be a little bit related. Each year we've had more and more applications, especially in the recent years. So the last year we had about 400 to 500 before the pandemic hit. The year before, and then obviously we only accepted a very small number because of the circumstances. So for that year, for example, the acceptance rate would be very low.
But to caveat that, Solomon,
right.
The number of students who were eligible for the YES grant and were interested in a virtual computational project was much lower. So the acceptance rate for eligible students was actually much higher last year, but it was just the program was restricted to only those students who are covered by our grants from the stipend eligible group.
Right, but anyway, so it will be based on how many spots we have this year and how many applications we receive. So this year it looks like we're going to have at least that close to 400 again. All right, what else do we have here? What does computational mean? Using math and computer science for biological research. Okay.
Yeah, that's a great question. So maybe I should have been more explicit what computational research means, but it sounds like whoever wrote that knew exactly what it meant. Yes, it's using computers to answer biological questions generally. It could be something that's purely computational, like you're developing some machine learning algorithm, but oftentimes it's maybe using a machine learning algorithm to predict some sort of biological response, right? So it's really at the intersection of using computers, using data analysis in order to create insights into medicine and biology. Yeah.
Could we please clarify the application deadline? So that'll be March 1st for the student applicant, and then their references will have an extra week in addition to that to send in their letters of recommendation. For freshmen in high school, what transcript do you send? Middle school or the first 9 weeks of high school? Whatever transcript you want. However, I will say that very likely if you're in your freshman year, there is a chance that you will not be eligible. So there's no year requirement, but there is an age requirement for the program. And you'll have to be at least 15 by the start of the program.
I have another question here too, Salman. I think that's a good one. Are computational skills and background a prerequisite for the comp bio programs? If yes, what skills? There aren't any background requirements. Again, having a background, having taken any computer science class or anything online that you may have engaged with, the Code Academy or whatever, I think is they're definitely beneficial and will help you through the project, but it's not required, right? So we have some mentors who are very willing to work with students with no computational background at all and trying to develop a project that could still be satisfying for you. So I guess that being said, I still would encourage everyone to apply, right? So for all of those questions about acceptance rate, you'll never accept anything you don't apply for. If we don't have strict requirements, so I would still say apply. You never know what's going to happen. It's been a crazy year, so anyone can be admitted for any individual thing. You would be surprised. This is advice I'd give you for anything that you apply to. You'd be surprised at that one thing that really speaks to a person who's reading your application that they'd be willing to fight for you for, right? You don't have to be everything, but if you can talk to someone and let them know who you are, oftentimes you'll get someone who fights for you.
I've got one more quick question, and then I'll go to the next. So regarding personal experience, I've had both virtual and in person. How do I note them down? Basically, there'll be an essay, and we'll go over this a little bit in the section I'm about to go over. But there'll be a place in the application, and we'll accept any kind of experience. So if you have virtual experience, put that down. If you have in-person experience, put it down. Doesn't matter whether you're applying for the virtual or in-person program, they're both going to be useful. All right.
Okay, I have a couple other questions. Can be okay, basically if working on an anatomy book count as prior research experience, even if it's not published? It can be. I mean, again, that's just an open form for you to tell us a little bit more about if you've done research. So if you feel that you did research to be involved in that project, then absolutely write about it. We don't have really strict guidelines of what counts and what doesn't. If you feel like you've done research, if you did your own homegrown science experiment, you tell us about it. That's what that's for. So it doesn't have to be formal research experience. All right, someone wrote, I'm taking AP Comp Sci Principles. I'm competent in Python, but not fluent, at least not yet. How should I rank myself in the application? Competent or expert or something else? I think it's hard for us to answer that exactly. And we know that this is a bit subjective. And so that's why we often give in those responses, if you say you're an expert or say you're a competent, you'll be followed up with a question of like basically telling us how or why. And then we'll use that information to really understand both your competencies, but also we use this information to try to place you into groups that will work with individuals who have these skills if they need them, all right? Okay, could you go over the programs that are categorized in the laboratory? Again, so just to reiterate this, the Women's Cancer Research, WCRC, ICI, this is Immunotherapy and Cancer Immunology, Tech Drive X, and Cancer Biology. Those are the 4 sites that are in labs. The 2 computational sites are COSB and CompBio. Okay. If I want to apply to a lab-oriented program, do I need to have prior experience in a lab? No. The answer to that is no. We expect that no one would have prior experience coming into this unless you've gone through our program, because we understand it's very difficult to get that prior experience, which is why we exist. We do not require prior experience at all. Okay. That's it. That's all the questions I have, Solomon, so far. Right. So why don't you jump into the next section? And again, keep the questions coming if you have them. I'll continue answering in chat. And we'll stick around for as long as you guys have questions after this is over as well, to answer any questions you might have.
Right. So hi everyone, my name is Solomon. If you started the application process, you've probably heard from me or seen my name a bunch of times. But I'm the program coordinator, and I'll be going over more of the logistics on like how to actually apply, the website, and things like that. So the big things that we're going to go over are the changes from last year, how to actually apply, some of the notes and common issues, and then again we'll have another section open for questions. All right, so the application process is mostly unchanged from previous years, but it has had a few updates. So we have a new application website. This is just based on the company that we were hosting it with, made their transition, and so we're moving with them. there's going to be new questions pertaining to the COVID policies and what you would be interested in during a virtual program. And then there's a new pre-survey task with automation that'll help you if you're trying to reuse your old application. And it'll have, again, those questions about the virtual, in-person, and hybrid programs. And the way that the program is, or the way that this form is now structured, that as you complete certain tasks, the rest of your required tasks will appear, and then you can submit your application. All right. So how to apply? You will go to this new application link. So some people have been emailing me with issues. A lot of times they're just using the old application website, which was Fluid Review. This is just SurveyMonkey. Really, there's not that much difference, but there's a new website link. So for those of you that applied last year, which will be a lot of you, your old account still exists, and so does your old login information. If you have trouble entering it, try resetting your password. And if you ever need to, you can contact me and I'll reset the account. If you use your account last year, you'll have the option to decide whether you want to use all, none, or some of your previous application. If you made an account before last year, so before the 2019 program, the records get deleted every year. The only reason that we didn't do it this year is because we wanted everyone to be able to reuse their application. And now if you're a new user, all you have to do is just create a new account and then verify and complete the email. And then again, so if your account was deleted or if you're a new user, you just approach the process as normal. So I'm going to quickly stop sharing that and open a browser tab. All right. So this is what the application website looks like. If it's your first time, you can hit the login button. If not, if you already have an account, or sorry, the register button. And if it's not your first time, you should be able to log in with your old credentials. Once you log in, you'll have the 3 different programs that we're offering for the applications. The undergraduate internship, obviously the Hillman Academy program, and then there's a resident application, which is not really important. It's more for undergraduates who are trying to be resident advisors, if we have dorms. So that's sort of a maybe. All right. In the login, it will look something like this. You'll log in with your account. For me, it will look like this. For everyone else, it will go straight to their normal page. And then I'm going to show what it looks like from the user. Okay. So for the user, they'll have this page. They'll have some basic information. If you have not yet verified your email address, this option will appear over here. It's very important that you do verify your email, otherwise you won't be able to complete certain tasks until it's done. To view which programs you can apply to, hit that button. Go to this next page, and we're going to show what the Hillman Academy application looks like. There'll be some information about the program. You can go to our website if needed, some information about stipend criteria. Whenever you're ready to apply, just hit this button. All right. Once you start your application, you'll have basically a doc that looks like this. These are the tasks that you'll need to complete. Once all of your tasks that you needed to complete are done, you'll be able to hit the submit button. It will say that this bar will be full when all of your tasks are complete. That does not mean that the application has been submitted yet. It's not submitted until this button is hit. So the first task that everyone's going to have to do is the pre-application survey. This task is very important because it populates all the remaining tasks that you'll need to do. So first it will ask if you applied in 2020. It'll ask if you want a traditional, an entirely hybrid, entirely virtual, or a hybrid program. You can select multiple options, so make sure to select all that you're interested in. There's a few questions about the pandemic. So if you answer this question, you'll get the question of whether you were part of the yes program. This was only for the students who were in our program last year. Otherwise, you'll hit no. And you'll get this task, which is where sort of the most instruction should be paid attention to. So if you want to use all of your previous application indicated here, you will have only one more task come up, which will basically be a signature, and you'll just use the same application that you did in 2020. There's no penalty or, for that. We just want to make it convenient for everyone who wasn't able to apply because of the pandemic. If you want to use some of your application, so you just want to use maybe an essay or just a transcript or some recommendations, please hit this box. And then in this text box right here, write out the references that you want to use. So for example, I'll want to use myself and Dr. Boone. We'll finish the task just to show what it looks like once it's complete. All right. And then once that's complete, you'll have the other tasks that are necessary pop up. So there's the application form, your demographics task, your inviting tasks. The thing about the invite tasks is these are the ones that you will not be able to do until the email address has been verified. For the other tasks, they're pretty simple. The Hillman Academy application is another form, just like you saw for the pre-application survey. You have your invite task. This is the demographics and stipend eligibility question. So please fill this out if you are interested in being considered for a stipend. You don't have to do anything if you are eligible based on this criteria. It'll automatically consider you. And then the last type of task is an upload task. So we can see it here for the transcript. It will give you the option to upload a file. When you upload files, please do so in a PDF format. It's the best way for this application to read them. If you send in a different file, it will either not accept it or it will have an error when we're trying to look at it on our end. But otherwise, you just upload a file the way you would for any other task. All right. If you do need to go back and change something, it's a little bit hidden, but make sure to hit these three buttons and then hit edit. And then you'll be able to go back and start a different application if you want to, and change anything that you need. So for the reusing some or the entirely new application, you'll have all of the tasks populate. If you say that you want to reuse some of your previous application, within 1 or 2 business days, we'll send you an email with your old application, and then we'll re-enter any of the references that you asked us to re-enter. All right. All right, so that's the basics of how to go over the application. 1 minute, let me just go back to my PowerPoint. All right. Okay. All right, so down to just some more important notes and common issues. So make sure, again, to indicate if you're going to reuse your old application so that we know to email you. If there's a holiday or some sort of event, we might be a little bit late. If you need it more urgently, just email us and we'll send it quicker. Make sure that when you add a reference, you notify them. Very often, these tasks are caught by spam or firewalls, especially if they're for a school server. So just make sure that people are aware to check, and if they don't respond, we can always make sure that the email gets to them. The deadline is, again, March 1st for students and March 8th for references and letters of recommendation. Um, Again, only upload PDF files. Make sure that the emails are either not caught by spam or firewalls, or that they're checked. Make sure to hit that submit button after you finish all of the tasks to actually have your application submit. And if you have any forgotten accounts or passwords, please email me and we'll help you reset that without any issue. All right, so that is the end of sort of my talk. We'll go to the chat if you have any questions. Let's see. What will the references be required to say about the applicants? So for the references, they'll have a few bullet points, basically saying like things like biological skill, computational skill, intellectual curiosity, creativity, etc., where they'll rate them from like a Likert scale of 1 to 5. They'll also have a quick prompt, basically saying why the student is interested in applying for this program, why they're interested in STEM. And then it's up to them to submit a letter of recommendation, sort of talking to those aspects, and really up to them about whatever they want to say about the applicant. The letters of recommendation are something that we really look very closely at during the application process. So it's important to have very strong recommendations. All right.
I have a couple of questions too, Selma. So while you're reading that, I will address them and then you can jump in. Someone asked an important question that I forgot to address about required days of the program. So all students are required to attend the first 2 days of the program and the last day. Those are absolutely required. You cannot miss them. We allow students to miss up to a week otherwise, as long as you indicate on the application that you may be doing so. So we like to know in advance. The reason why you have to be there those first 2 days is because the university requires training. So that's one of the main reasons. So you have to do that training before you're allowed into research labs. The other is it's the day that you'll be meeting your mentor and starting the project. So even if your high school is still going forward, so we work based on Pittsburgh Public Schools. That's our primary school district that we plan around. We understand that because this is a national program, there are schools that have school much later than our first day. We have never, though, met a school that would not allow a student to miss to come to our program. The other nice thing is if we are virtual this year, I think it will be much less of an issue because we won't need you for the entirety of those first 2 days. We will need you for a significant portion of the first day and part of the second day. So you should be able to still, finish up school while going forward. And that might be true if you're in person with us on the off chance and your school is remote. So that's important. The other question that we had that I think is relevant to others, someone asked about clinical experience. The only clinical experience we really give to students is every student, if we're in person, if COVID rules allow this to happen, which I really don't think it will happen this year, is we offer for each of our students can observe a surgery, okay? And you're able to observe the surgery from actually inside the surgical suite. I really wouldn't pin a lot of hopes that will be able to happen this year because of COVID, but that's the primary way that we really expose you to the clinical world, other than having people come in who are clinicians and talk. And we have clinician scientists whose research lab you might be in as well. So I think those were two excellent questions. Do you have any other questions, Solomon?
Will we be able to view prior year's application? Yeah, so if you select, you'll only be able to view that if you select the use your prior application option. And you'll be able to see everything except for the recommendations because we keep those private for the references. Let's see. What is the age requirement for observing the surgery? If you're if you can make it into the program, you can observe the surgery. So if you're 15, I think you're still allowed to see it.
That's great. I have another question here that I think applies to a lot of others. It says, does it matter if the reference letters are from science teachers? Can they be from anyone? They can be from anyone. We would like at least one of them to talk about your interest in science, right? So so that oftentimes is a science teacher, but it doesn't have to be. If you have anyone else who can speak to who you are, that's the main thing. So it doesn't have to be a teacher. We have some specific questions about who the mentors will be this year. We don't know yet. We will start recruiting those soon. But again, like anything, this year is going to be, I think, still slightly different in that our planning, while we're doing lots of planning, we're always planning, we're still being shaped by the pandemic as we go forward. So I think mentors may be a little more tentative to sign on this year. So that we might not really know until later on in March even of who our mentors will be. So we don't know that yet, but you can find oftentimes the people who might mentor by looking at departmental web pages at the university. dbmi.pitt.edu is one for Cosby. That's a lot of the mentors. csb.pitt.edu is a lot of the mentors for CompBio. The other ones are a little more difficult. The Cancer Center has a web page that lists most of the investigators there. Those are all fully eligible, but they might be at CompBio, they might be at WCRC, they might be at ICI. So this is where the intersection lies. But I think those three websites are probably the ones where you'll find them most. At TechDriveX, there are many different departments. So you just have to kind of snoop around of the type of research if you think you're interested in. If you find an investigator here at Pitt, you can write about that person. And one of the things is, if you do, we oftentimes try to use that to recruit them. So even if they weren't in the initial group, if you find someone you like, a lot of times faculty members like having someone who is interested in doing work with them. So we'll use that as fodder to try to get them for you, but there's no promises. But good question.
All right.
Okay, someone asked, this is a good question. Before I saw the Hillman Academy, I've been applying to the MWRI. Would it be redundant to apply to both? No, we are separate programs, although there's still some overlap. So at the MWRI is where, so MWRI, I'm using acronyms, is McGee Women's Research Institute. So they have a research program as well. It's smaller. I think it's typically 5 to 10 students. That happens at the McGee Women's Research Institute, which is across the street from the McGee Women's Hospital. That is also the location of our Women's Cancer Research Center site. Okay, so there's some overlap there, and students from MWRI program sometimes might attend stuff from our program. Some students from WCRC might attend that. So there's some overlap, certainly not redundant, completely independent from us. So please apply to both of them.
So I have a question. I applied last year and would like to keep my recommendations. So basically the question is, if you reuse your previous year's recommendations, are they going to count against you if they're from a teacher that was a previous year? So if that teacher hasn't had you in like an extra year, will that recommendation count against you? So I think the general question for that, the answer is like anyone who reuses the recommendations or chooses to reuse the application will be evaluated, as fairly as though they had applied in this year. So we want to just assume that everyone will be. As always, I mean, you can always, more information rarely hurts as long as it's good information. But we won't think less if there's a gap because the application is from last year.
I have another question that I'll answer. I had 2 people ask about ancestry. I don't know of any projects that directly deal with ancestry. We have plenty of projects that deal with genomics and genetics. And the only thing that might deal with ancestry at all would be either in animals, or if it's in humans, tracking a cancer allele that we know causes cancer, right? So looking at how, like BRCA1, for example, you may have heard of. It's a familial cancer gene that famously Angelina Jolie had a preventative mastectomy because it puts you at higher risk. So studying a gene like that and trying to understand how it's inherited is a possibility of a project I don't know of any projects we've had like that over the last few years, but that's certainly something that's being studied at the university, but nothing directly involving looking at your own ancestry. You have any other questions, Solomon?
That's all from me.
I think that's all I see, but if again, it does get a little, kind of messy trying to look at all the private messages. So if I missed yours, please either type it again or type it into the general chat so that it doesn't go unanswered. I'm not intentionally ignoring any questions. So if I missed it, please write it again directly to me or do into the general chat so that we see it. Or feel free to unmute and ask a question too. Okay, actually, this is a question. Is there a place to see publications or research that past participants have done? So Solomon, you have to remind me of where we are with putting up our past abstract books. Are those used to be on our website? I don't know if they still are or not.
Let me see, they might be on that history. No, they're not there yet.
But if that's something you're interested in, you can reach out to us. I know that on our that's on our website where we explain the different sites, we give some example projects from past students. But if you're interested in seeing our past abstract books, or maybe just the past couple, reach out to Solomon, and we'll be happy to send you a copy of them. There's another question that I did see here twice. What are the differences between the two computational science programs? That's a good question. And there is so much overlap that it's hard to answer, I guess that's what I'll preface it with. Both groups deal a lot with modeling. I think that the Cosby site might have slightly more genomics than the comp bio, but that's not a hard and fast rule. There's certainly plenty of genomics with our comp bio mentors as well. There are more protein modeling at the comp bio site, or like the kind of visualization of proteins, drug discovery is at the comp bio site as well. Both sites use machine learning. Both sites, again, they do some sort of cancer informatics, cancer genomics. So there's a high degree of overlap between those two sites. The one thing that's different is the Cosby site, the computational biology site, is bigger. On a normal year, we would take 16 students or so, and the comp bio might take 8. So it's usually bigger. The other thing is there's a little more diversity in the Cosby site. So we also have people in the engineering department. So we have 3 engineering groups 4, maybe 5 engineering groups who regularly work with us on machine learning with what's called signal processing. So if you're more interested in engineering, I think Cosby might be a slightly better group. We also have a couple of groups at the Children's Hospital that work with imaging. I think imaging might be no, both sites do imaging, but we have some pediatric imaging and MRI, fMRI imaging groups in the Cosby site. Comp Bio has some really cool multiplex imaging, so where you're using multiple colors to look at different things. But there's a real high degree of overlap between the two. So I know that probably doesn't directly answer your question, but it's so similar that it's hard to distinctly answer that question.
I have one question.
Sure, please go ahead and ask.
So if you apply to the program and you get accepted, then for the following years, will you have to reapply?
That's a great question. So if you are part of the, and I apologize, I didn't see who asked that, maybe it was Ryan. If you are part of the YES program, you're guaranteed admission a second year. If you're not part of the YES program, then yes, you have to reapply, but it does open up other opportunities. So